My name is Talia Fletcher. I refer to myself as a creative person, a writer. I've always wanted to be a writer. I had people that encouraged me, but then discouraged me back in the day before I had my, oh, you're telling me no attitude. I'm going to do this anyway. It took me a few years to develop that. And now at the age of 46, I finally started writing again. I've started writing poetry again. I have a blog. I write about being a survivor. I write about the memories that I have as an abused child. And I was abused by both of my parents. I had no safety. So the world was a horrible place as far as I was concerned as a child. And I've actually, I've had conversations with other survivors where it was like, I sort of used to believe that I was actually like an alien that was put down on planet Earth to like check out people and see, like if the human race was worthy of continued existence. And I used to like sit outside and like look up in the sky and just be like, okay, so I'm done with this. And I kind of feel like at least my parents are not really humans worthy of future existence, but the aliens never came to get me. So I guess I'm still here, trying to figure all that stuff out. And, I've had various careers. I've had a lot of adventures. I was in the military. I was deployed to Iraq. I survived that, came back, got out, was a human resources consultant for many years, basically denying everything that I really wanted to be doing, which was writing. So a couple years ago, after starting my journey of sobriety and a lot of therapy and medication, I said, you know what, I can't do all these other things anymore. I'm not this person. I kept trying, it's like fitting a square block in a round hole type of thing. Like I never fit. I never felt like I fit. And so a couple of years ago, I said, you know what, I've done so many things and now I just want to do the thing that I really want to do. So here we are. And when I saw that there was a call for poets and I haven't read any of my stuff out loud in 30 years, so I kind of jumped on the opportunity and said, I can do this. I've done a lot of things. I can do this too. And lightning, I hope, doesn't strike me down. And if it does, then that's just a very weird fluke. And sometimes that just happens. So actually I have some writing from when I was in high school. So I wrote a lot when I was in the midst of still in my abusive household. And this one that I'm going to start with, I wrote in 1990, and I submitted a lot of my poetry for English class assignments. And I think teachers just didn't really know what to do with me. So they were like, this is great. So this is very, very old. This is like, still very angry Talia days, I will say. And this is called The Puppeteer. I am a puppet in a clown suit, smiling and dancing when I feel sad and tired. Someone holds the strings of my life in their hands, moving them this way and that as I move helplessly about that stage of life. Sometimes I change costumes. Now I am the strong man, lifting the heavy weights. Inside, I am weak. I have no control over who I am, what costumes I shall don. My personality is my own, but I shall never bring it out. It has stage fright, like many of the things that are my own. Scared to face life, to face rejection, to face the world. For now, I shall become something I am not. Changing costumes and hanging on strings while a puppeteer moves me about, here and there, back and forth, while the rest of me hides behind the curtains, concealed from the world. And, I revisiting some of this, and I'm going to talk a little bit while I pull up the next one, I'm realizing that I didn't really change much of that. I think having to hide and being told when you go out in public to put on a front. My father was a professor at a local college, and so he was a pillar of the community, and my mother was his wife, and so therefore she was like secondary pillar or something. Although he was definitely telling people how crazy she was, which is a whole other family dynamic that is fascinating. But I think I never really got away from that feeling that I have to become something else for people to accept me and for people to really want to be around me. And yeah, I'm in therapy and I'm absolutely working through all that still. So the next one I'm going to read is one that was written about the same time. I think it was 1992. I kind of been tweaking some of these lately. It's called Childhood Jeans. Don't fit. Don't fit. Mom, they don't fit. I watched as my favorite pair of childhood jeans was carried away by none other than my mother, to be placed among the other outgrown, lost, or forgotten childhood favorites, to be given to those in need. My torn, worn, faded blue pair of jeans had just been placed among those things that held no love from anyone. They were no one's favorite anything. My poor, lovely pair of jeans, lying there, looking as forlorn as I, sneaking, peeking, poking. I made my way silently through the house to rescue my jeans from that feared dread that I was sure awaited them. Watching, waiting, listening, I made my way to where they lay, my poor defenseless pair of jeans. Swiftly, I lifted them from the piles of other forgotten clothes that had no one who loved them. I felt bad that I could not take them to. They seemed sad also, but I snuck away with my sacred jeans, clutching them to my chest as though they would become one with my soul and disappear forever from the view of others. I made my way back to my room to make them my favorite pair of torn, worn, faded childhood jeans. To me, reading that now, what's interesting is that it's my mother that's taking my jeans away. And she was a person that was also very abusive and very emotionally abusive and verbally abusive. And so you take something from me that I felt comfortable with, and the person in my poem who was taking it from me was my mother, who took a lot of, or just never gave a lot of that comfort that any child it really, really needs. So the next one, oddly, I didn't title this one, but this one's actually recent-ish. Like I was looking at some of my older stuff and I started to take pieces of it and tweak parts of them. And this is one of those newer ones that I've written probably within the last couple of weeks. Head buried, eyes closed, silencing pain, hiding truth, pleading, begging for anything to postpone the inevitable seclusion of night. The man in the moon ignores the muffled cries of innocence lost. Darkness encroaches, extinguishing the light. Reality is hidden, pushed away. Only the make-believe exists in the night. There is little comfort there, even within the made-up world. As darkness seeps in, not even the illumination of the moon can pierce the blackness. Tears squeezed from closed eyes fall along the contours of the young girl's face. Wishing, hoping, begging, the man in the moon to safety, please bring the young girl's memories. How much time do I have left, Michael? I don't remember.
I think at least another 5 or 6 minutes, certainly,
okay,
because we started late here.
Okay, all right. I just wanted to make sure, and I forgot to look at the time. This one I wrote about a week ago. Probably still working on it, but hey, that's life in general. And I call it, What? Am I afraid? What? Am I afraid of the shadows lurking in the night, waiting just around that corner, just out of the light, waiting for me to follow, to beg for acceptance I know will never come. And yet, there I am, unable to escape, to utter a breath, gripping fear. Within there is no movement, no utterance of the single word that would break the world apart, break the silence, break the pattern, to break free, to finally be free. So this next one I wrote after I volunteered to read tonight, because I struggle a lot, which I think a lot of survivors do, with feeling like our abuse wasn't that bad. Someone else always had it worse than we did. So therefore what we have isn't anything that we should complain about. I think that also just stems from a lot of the stuff that I went through as a kid too, I'm sure. But it's interesting, this kind of all came out after I was like, I'll volunteer to read poetry, and then suddenly it was like, oh. And this is called, I titled this, Am I a Fraud? Am I a fraud? Missing complete memories where only fragments exist. Pieces of a time of shame, of a child only wanting to be loved. A want so great, agreeing was the only way. Saying yes or nothing at all. A silent agreement, a compromise. Love in exchange for my memories of the nighttime visits that left me with no memory. Time lost, your arrival, and then morning sunshine, the light greeting me after the darkness, as if the night did not exist. Am I a fraud if I don't remember? I remember enough. Thank you.
Wow. One, you're not a fraud. Let's start there. The whole idea of every one of us, I think, as you said, has this idea that whatever happened to us wasn't as bad as someone else. And that repeated phrase from people who haven't been abused, I find just exasperating. Well, think about all the good things you've gotten. You didn't have it as bad as so-and-so, but personal pain is personal pain is personal pain. And I think we as survivors, certainly me, I am want to underestimate what I've been through, to minimize it. And I really appreciate that piece because of that, because we're not frauds and we have a right to what we have been through. Larry, you had a question for Talia. I see your hand up.
Yep.
You have to unmute yourself.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
I can.
First of all, thanks for all this. Very powerful. I think one thing that your friends here need to confirm to you is that this is your truth. And it doesn't matter if it doesn't make sense to other people. It doesn't even have to make sense to you. Yeah,
True.
and that is so common, and that is what's especially frightening for at a certain stage of recovery. But why is that? Because when we look at these issues, we're trying to look at them rationally, but these are emotional wounds. They, why would anybody do these kinds of things to a child? That's to begin with. There's no rational explanation. Well, so, if you look at the professional literature, there's lots of discussion of this, but a lot of it comes down to what in the literature is called cognitive distortions, messed up thinking on the part of people who harmed kids. And kids and then the adults that they become, we were never trained to expect to watch out for any of this. The society that we live in tells us that kids are safe in their families. And if you're not safe in your family, well, okay, what's the conclusion to be drawn from that? And I just want to give you an example, which I use with a lot of the teenagers I work with. Imagine a kid sitting on the floor watching television, and one of his parents comes in and gives him a terrific smack across the head, and continues all across the room and leaves. The kid is going to wonder what happened. Yeah, what's going on? The kid has two choices. The first choice is that I'm just sitting here watching television. I didn't do anything wrong. And that, in fact, is the truth. But if he sticks with that explanation, then it means that the further truth is that he's not in control of any of this. He or she is, if it's a little girl, is powerless. And that this will continue so long as the adult wishes it to continue. And that is an unbearable, that is the truth. But that is unbearable. So what does the kid do? The kid opts for the untruth. And that is that, well, I must have done something wrong. Why does the kid, he or she, opt for this? Because if the child's behavior is somehow wrong, then the child just simply has to adjust the behavior and things will stop. So the child has power, there are possibilities, there are hope. I just have to find the way to be a good boy or a good girl, and all this will stop. But of course, it's untruth.
Oh yeah.
But that's what we opt for in all cases, because the alternative is that we're absolutely powerless, and this is going to go on for as long as the adult wishes to continue. And that's a rough reality to face, especially if it's, as in your case, it's happening in your own home. So all these emotions you have about it, absolutely understand. How else are you to feel?
Right.
But by writing these things, you are reasserting your power. You're claiming your power, and that's your way forward.
Yeah, and it's taken a long time. And I think that's, something else that's important in general is none of this. I mean, I've been sober 2.5 years. So, I mean, I've spent most of my life just drinking and pushing it all away and not wanting to, look at it or deal with it. And I think creative outlets, whether that's writing or music or, I don't know, dance, I'm trying to think of things that is creative, but, it's so important for being able to have an outlet where you can speak your truth and show your truth, and no one can take that away from you. What I write down is what I write down. And, sure, I guess I could read it to somebody, or somebody could read it and they could disagree with it or argue with me about it. Typically unlikely. And if somebody does that, I probably would just walk away from them. But because it's like, well, I don't, this is my truth. I'm speaking my truth, and you can ignore it, deny it all you want, but it is the truth. And I think that that's one of the key things with writing, and why I've come back to it now after so many years of not having that outlet, and being, quite frankly, I was miserable for so many years. And yeah, it's hard now, but way better than how I was 3 years ago. And I'm writing again, which makes me very happy.
I'm very glad you're back, because your stuff has already made me think about some different things that I hadn't thought about. What age were you when you wrote the Jeans poem?
Let's see. 1992, I was probably 15.
Because it's a very sophisticated piece, and very touching, and very, I don't know how do you think, I phrase this as a question because it's something that I experienced, but do you think that this kind of trauma has a partial effect of making us feel like we have to be more mature earlier because we have to handle it?
Yeah, I think it does. I looking back on my life, I was always I would lie to people about my age, and not because it really gave me, it's not like I was like, oh, I'm 21, I can drink my face off legally. I was certainly able to get alcohol without needing to actually have an ID, but, I mean, people that would meet me in like bookstores, libraries, just like the crystal shop I used to go to all the time, he thought I was in college and I was in high school. Like I don't even think I had my license yet. So I was probably like 15, 16. And I think there is also something that forces you to be more mature, because you don't get to do that frivolous stuff. You don't get to have this, you don't really get to have a childhood. And so it forces you to grow up you're dealing with these like such adult issues, like Larry was saying. I mean, it's like you're a kid and your parent walks to the room and they smack you upside the head. Yeah, you could sit there and say, which I remember just logically fighting with myself about that. Like, I didn't do anything. That specific example never happened, but something very similar things would happen all the time, because my mother was very verbally and emotionally abusive. And it was always like, wow, I must be like this horrible human being, like just this evil person that just can't ever do anything right. And then this other part of my brain would go, yeah, that's bullshit. Whoops, am I not supposed to swear on these? Another part of my brain would be like, no, that's not, you're not that person. Like, and so it was this constant sort of internal struggle. And I think that it forced me to really watch people and look at their behavior as part of my hypervigilance, which isn't the greatest thing. However, the piece that comes with that is an amazing perception that also forced me to grow up, because I started really observing the world around me, I think, earlier than most people do. And it does, I think it makes you be, so like, I'm 46, I feel like I'm like 105. So like emotionally and mentally, like, it's just, I've lived so many lifetimes already, and I'm kind of like, yeah, I've been around.
Listening to you talk about that, the hypervigilance is definitely part of my life, was part of my life from very early on. The people watching and then trying to understand human behavior. And for me, maybe it was about trying to predict human behavior so I could stay safe away from whatever was going on. What advantage do you think it gave you as you felt you were understanding human behavior better?
So I think it was just I think it gave me an advantage in just navigating the world in general. I was also in the military, so I was deployed in a combat zone. My level of awareness, I mean, you want to talk about a place where hypervigilance is like, I mean, it's like the golden piece of my personality during my year in Baghdad, because I paid attention to everything. And it was like nothing, and you're also like potentially in a life-threatening situation. So it really worked out very well for me. I wish I could kind of turn it on and off, but unfortunately I can't figure out how to do that yet. I think that provided an amazing advantage for me. And I think just going through life and the things that I've done, every single job I've held, every company I've worked for as a consultant, and going in other fields, my ability to really perceive and understand people has really carried me where I am today, and even beyond that. It's just I think it was an amazing advantage. And as much as I'm like it, I really wish that I had never been I really wish that I wasn't an adult survivor of childhood abuse, which I think everybody who is an adult survivor wishes that, but at the same time, kind of gave me this weird superpower.
It's interesting, the superpower. The discussion gets brought up a lot in our group and stuff like that about the idea that, well, if this hadn't happened to you, people will say to you, if this hadn't happened to you, you wouldn't be such a nice person. Or if this hadn't happened to you, it wouldn't be such a, and your awareness, I think, is a wonderful thing. I've had to work very hard with myself to say, I would have been a kind person anyway. I didn't have to have this happen to me to be kind. Yeah. I think I know what I'm saying here, which is that there are people who haven't been abused who kind of want to see abuse as they want to find the silver lining.
Yeah.
How do you feel? Do you hear that stuff from other people, whether it's online or in person or whatever? And how do you feel about
Oh yeah. Oh, my mother-in-law actually said to me, she said to me, she said, you know, it's really amazing that you have this insight and that you're able to, like, you know, work through. And she knows a little bit because she doesn't talk to me. So it isn't talked about, like, what it is I'm going through. Like when I stopped drinking, it was just, oh, Talia doesn't drink anymore. It's like, no, people, I'm an alcoholic. It's okay. I'm okay with that label. Like, I'm an alcoholic. I am somebody that cannot drink. I cannot, like, recreationally do anything drug wise out, you know, anything like that. Cause I will go, like, straight and, like, just, I will take it to the nth degree. I don't know when to stop. I don't quit when it comes to that stuff. So there was no discussion about that. It was just, oh, Talia doesn't drink anymore. So it's fascinating to me. But anyway, she said to me, she said, it's amazing you have, you know, this insight, and you have, this is the reason why. My father-in-law likes to come up behind me and, like, clap me on the shoulders. I'm like, oh, yeah. And I tend to, like, I disassociate. And my husband's actually watched my face, and I almost pass out. Like, I, like, start to lose, like, vision, you know, my vision starts to, like, kind of fold in on itself a little bit. So he did that. And I, because I dissociate, I don't have the immediate response of, please don't do that. Like, you can't do that. And so my husband, as my advocate, my father-in-law did that to me. And my husband said, you can't do that. You've got to stop doing that with her. Like, it doesn't, you know, and my father-in-law didn't understand why. He thought I had, like, a migraine or something. It's like, I don't understand where you got that from, but okay. And I said, no, I have PTSD. And I said, and you can't, like, and when you do that, like, I dissociate. It kind of gave me the opening that I hadn't been able to kind of get myself through yet. So my mother-in-law says, you know, it's really great that you have this insight and you're working through all this stuff, and I can't help you. And I was like, okay, like, what am I supposed to do with that? Okay. And I was like, all right. So, but you know, so it's interesting to me what people do with this. You know, they can, on the one hand, say, it's great you have this insight. And then on the other hand, say, I can't help you. And conversation I had with my therapist about that, because I was like, what in the hell? What am I supposed to do with that? And what does that mean? And honestly, if I wasn't in the place that I was in my healing, that was damaging. It was damaging that she said that. I don't care where I am in my healing. That was just a damaging thing to say. But she doesn't understand that. And again, nobody talks to me about it in my husband's family, and we live like 5 minutes away from them. So we're close in proximity. But it's amazing to me the things that people will try to come up with. They'll say, oh, it's, you know, silver lining, or wow, it's really great you don't drink anymore, or, you know, but it's like this very, like, surface, like, fluff. And I'm not a surface fluff person. Like, I am an introvert by nature. So you want to go, like, you're going to try to go, like, here, and I'm going to go, like, 8 layers deep. And that's what I want to do. Like, I want to have these conversations. So I think it's people's way of also sort of making themselves feel better about the world they live in.